that every ideology, to be operative, shouldn't go to the end. It has to leave its true implications a little bit in shadow.
This is Psi 10 Bruggencate. Those viewers of mine who are ensconced in the Great Debate will recognize him as the tentpole around which a new wave of presuppositional apologetics has organized itself. The argument that he advances is not terribly convincing or interesting, and in fact it is by definition not an argument. Nonetheless, the strategy that he employs still attracts very intelligent people to line up and engage in this sort of debate. Through my conversations with what might loosely be called the presuppositionalist community here on YouTube, I've come to the belief that this strategy is actually not quite what people think it is, and so I've set myself the task of sketching out what I think is actually going on here. This is actually a somewhat difficult task, but in understanding the mechanisms of presuppositionalism, it strikes me as being the case that the best place to start is not actually with an example of Psi using said argument against an atheist, but rather what Psi says about the argument to the Christian community. Remember, the goal here is not to argue directly against the argument as such, but rather to understand and unpack the context that allows for such an argument to appear, and what function it seems to serve within the ideological apparatus of fundamentalist Christianity. In other words, it's not a question of whether or not it is sound, it is a question of why someone would adopt it. Nietzsche once wrote, "It has gradually become clear to me that every philosophy up till now has consisted of, namely, the confession of its originator, and a species of involuntary and unconscious autobiography, and moreover that the moral or immoral purpose in every philosophy has constituted the true vital germ out of which the entire plant has always grown. Indeed, to understand how the abstrusest metaphysical assertions of the philosopher have been arrived at, it is always well and wise to first ask oneself, what morality does he or she aim at? Accordingly, I do not believe that an impulse to knowledge is the father of philosophy, but that another impulse, here as elsewhere, has only made use of knowledge, and mistaken knowledge, as an instrument. In the philosopher there is absolutely nothing impersonal, and above all, his morality furnishes a decided and decisive testimony as to who he is. That is to say, in what order the deepest impulses of his nature stand to each other." End quote. To be clear, however, this is not an attempt at an ad hominem. I have no intentions of actually attacking Psi or any presuppositionalist character. At some level, this video series is simply going to be an analysis of Psi's speech, Apologetics is Easy. Make no mistake, however, my interest is not in the intent with which the speech was written, but rather the effects that the speech produces. If I do make claims that begin with "what Psi is doing," ... or whatever else, the Psi that I'm referring to is the picture of Psi that is constructed as an effect of the text and the performance, rather than the flesh and blood man delivering it. The atheists on YouTube have become much too interested in going toe-to-toe with the argument on its own terms. I don't entirely understand why, as it's quite clear that such an argument is constructed in such a way as to be a losing battle from the get-go. The hope here, on the other hand, is to provide a model of why and how the presuppositional argument is convincing to a certain kind of Christian, and therefore to open up a discussion about what's really going on.